You ever notice something? The people shouting the loudest warnings about AI, the ones talking about an existential threat, they're often folks who've already made it to the top of their field. It's fascinating. While we're all debating humans versus machines, there's a whole other story playing out just beneath the surface. It's a story about power, about status, and really, it's a generational fight over what the future is even going to look like. So let's get into it. So, on one side, you've got the establishment. Picture someone like a Dr. Alistair Finch, a celebrated expert who's warning about chaos, about us losing our very ability to think. And his voice, well, it gets amplified everywhere. But then on the other side, you've got the challenger. Think of Amaya Reed, a young startup founder. She looks at AI and doesn't see a threat at all. She sees the single most powerful tool her generation has to tackle huge problems and create something totally new. I mean, you've got two brilliant people looking at the same thing and seeing completely different worlds. And that contrast, right there, that's the real heart of the issue we're talking about today. Is all this anxiety and fear really about the technology, or is this just a new costume for a very, very old story? A fight between those who are defending the way things are and those who are trying to build something different. And look, this isn't just a hunch or a few anecdotes. When you look at the actual data, a really clear and kind of dramatic pattern starts to emerge. 73%. Just let that number sink in for a second. It's a huge majority. So what is it? Well, that's the percentage of professionals under the age of 35 who are already using generative AI tools every single week. And here's where it gets really stark. A recent McKinsey survey found that while almost 3/4 of young pros have made AI a part of their weekly routine, that number just plummets to only 34% for professionals over 55. That's not a gap, my friends. That is a chasm. And the why behind that divide is what's so telling. It really boils down to this fundamental disagreement about who AI is actually for. Younger professionals, they tend to see it as a tool for the little guy, something that empowers individual workers and small startups. The older generation of professionals, they're more likely to see it as a tool for the powerful, something that's only going to make giant tech companies and rich investors even richer. They're looking at the exact same technology and seeing two totally opposite futures. Okay, so let's try to understand that first perspective, the view from the top of the mountain. Why are the most established, most successful voices so often the most worried? And first, let's be really clear here. A lot of their concerns are 100% legitimate. We're talking about pioneers in the field, people like Jaffrey Hinton and Yoshua Bengio. They're raising alarms about very real problems, like algorithms being biased, the weaponization of AI, and how it can spread misinformation like wildfire. This isn't some far-off sci-fi stuff. These are serious ethical and technical hurdles we absolutely have to figure out. But running right alongside those valid technical worries, there's this powerful psychological force at play called loss aversion. It's a core idea from behavioral economics, and it basically says that we are wired to feel the pain of losing something about twice as strongly as the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing. We are hardwired to protect what we've already got. And here's the kicker. If you've spent 30 years mastering a system, climbing the ladder, building a career, and achieving success, AI doesn't look like just a new tool. It looks like a threat. It's a force that could completely upend the rules of the game you've already won. It threatens to make your hard-earned expertise, well, maybe not so special anymore. Why would you want to change a game you're already winning? All right, now let's flip that coin. Let's look at it from the other side, from the perspective of those who are still climbing that mountain. For them, the whole equation is turned on its head. If the current system feels like it's full of gatekeepers and roadblocks, then AI doesn't look like a loss at all. It is the opportunity. It's the path to getting the very same relevance, authority, and control that the establishment is so afraid of losing. It's a chance to compete on a totally new playing field where all the old rules suddenly don't matter as much. There's actually a classic economic idea that describes this perfectly. It's called creative destruction. It's this theory that the engine of progress is this constant kind of messy cycle where new innovations come along and just dismantle old industries and power structures to make way for the new. The economist who came up with it, Joseph Schumpeter, he called it a perennial gale. It's like this constant storm. It brings progress, for sure, but it's not exactly welcomed by the people living in the houses that are about to get blown down. And AI? AI is that gale, but on a scale we've never seen before. It isn't just automating tasks on a factory floor. It's starting to automate the creation of knowledge itself, the very thing that makes an expert, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, or a scientist. It's a direct challenge to the value at the very core of these elite professions. So, when you start to put all these pieces together, the data, the psychology, the economics, a much clearer picture starts to form. What this all suggests is that the great AI debate isn't just about technological risk. The real engine driving so much of the fear we see in the headlines, it's a social one. It's a fight over professional territory, a struggle for status, and a classic power dynamic between an established generation and a rising one. And of course, the fears of the establishment are the ones we hear the most, because they're amplified through the media and the institutions they control. Now, it's super important to realize this story isn't just about age. It's way more complex than that. For example, women often have higher concerns about AI bias because, well, they've experienced bias firsthand in their lives. Racial minorities often see both a higher risk of discrimination being coded into these systems and a huge opportunity to use AI to bypass biased human gatekeepers. So the lines in this conflict aren't just drawn by age, but by who has been empowered or disempowered by the systems of the past. So that leaves us with one last question to chew on. As we all try to figure out this AI future, we have to ask ourselves, is the dominant narrative of fear really helping us have a clear-eyed conversation about the actual risks? Or is it actually masking the anxieties of an older guard who are projecting their own fear of losing relevance onto the tools of a new generation? How we decide to answer that question is probably going to define the kind of future we end up building.